I guess the newest thing that I probably have watched is Demon Slayer, the anime. And that's mainly because some of my siblings are big anime fans and there's a movie coming out next weekend. So I thought, I'm attending the movie with them. So I was like, let me at least get some semblance as to what the hell this show is about. So I've watched one episode so far, and it's your typical intro to story where something tragic's happened to the main character, family's been killed by a demon, and that is essentially pushing him down a path to becoming a demon slayer, essentially. So very basic, very dramatic, as animes tend to be as well. But I thought it was cool. I thought it was an interesting sort of first episode. We'll see how that develops before I get to the movie. I don't know how many episodes I can watch before the movie on the weekend, but yeah, we'll try to get through as many as I can.
Yeah, I think I have something similarly lowbrow, which is Downton Abbey. Now, I'd heard a lot of things about Downton Abbey, but I'd never quite gotten into it because it kind of seemed like a history light soap opera. But like just on a whim, I just started watching it because I figured, well, it's so popular, it's so well known, I should at least have seen an episode. And by the end of the week, I was done with the 5 seasons. It is very much a history light soap opera, but it's a really good one. And I think it has enough in it to kind of keep my attention, even though I do not care for the relationship stuff and the marriages and all of that. Right? I don't care about that. What is much more interesting is kind of the basic story of it. Kind of follows this aristocratic family throughout the 1910s and 20s through World War One and the transition of Britain into kind of modernity. And a big plot point is kind of all the technological changes. Like there's an episode where they get a telephone, for example, right? Like it's that kind of thing, right? And it deals with kind of the fall of the aristocracy from the point of view of the aristocrats. The story is kind of split between the upstairs people, so the aristocratic family and, all the different lords and ladies and all of that. And then the downstairs people, which is the staff. It's kind of split 50-50 between those. The upside of the show is basically that it's kind of got pretty mediocre writing that is elevated by some amazing performances. Like they really lucked out with some of the actors that they cast who really elevate middling dialogue. Also, it deals with a whole bunch, like there's a bunch of interesting episodes where they deal with kind of historical topics, right? Like World War One and in independent Ireland, and they realize that their estate is losing money and now they're looking for ways to generate an income, but working for your income is something that goes against their identity, and now they have to amend it, and different characters have different ideas of where to draw the line, how much to modernize, how much to preserve tradition, and how, and all of that, right? On the downside, it kind of speed runs a lot of the historical events where it kind of rushes through a whole bunch of events that by themselves could be an entire show. And they kind of downplay kind of the attitudes of the time, where especially prejudices are just there if they serve the plot but not otherwise. They also kind of like the degree to which the upstairs people and the downstairs people interact with each other is also really sugar coated, where they are much more familiar than they should be, and they talk much more openly than they should. And the show sometimes remembers that this is an issue, and then they make an episode about that. And the next episode, they again are really friendly and all of and really, really personal and all of that, right? So it is not high art. It is not an amazing story. It's just a good watch, and it's an enjoyable watch. And for that reason, I would recommend it. Don't watch it if you want a hard-hitting historical drama. Watch it if you want like an enjoyable character-focused drama in a mostly historical setting.
Well,
That's kind of my glowing review. A few weeks ago, Bob's Burgers finished its latest season, which is the 15th season. A lot of these shows, after 15 seasons, usually drop off in quality. The jokes get tired. The original showrunners leave, and then the show suffers as a result of a new showrunner, stuff like that, right? And Bob's Burgers is just not that way. It's just one of my all-time comfort watches. It remains creative and intelligent, and it has maintained a steady level of quality, which I think is commendable after 15 years. And like if you've not seen it, it's essentially an animated sitcom about this family that runs a struggling burger restaurant in like the seaside town. And it's basically characters getting into wacky hijinks. There's these sitcom plots, and you've got the three children, you've got the two parents who are running this burger place, and you've got like this cast of eccentric characters. And it's very smart, it's very funny. When it wants to be, it's very heartfelt. Like there's some really sentimental episodes that, because it's as creative and as smart as it is, most of the time kind of don't overstay their welcome, but actually have something to say and be worthwhile watching. I actually think it's gotten a little bit better over the seasons, and it's not showing any signs of running out of steam. I think that's pretty remarkable after 15 seasons. Like, I think it's got a kind of mixed reputation, and I actually think it's one of the better of these animated sitcoms that kind of is not quite as appreciated as it should be. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, I can definitely say I think I'm one of those people that probably don't appreciate it as much as it might deserve to be, because it's one that you kind of are always aware of, but I've never checked it out for whatever reason. I've just kind of always looked at it and thought it just didn't have the same appeal as like maybe like a Simpsons or a Family Guy or something along those lines. So yeah, I think I'm one of those people that just looked at it and just passed it up without really giving it a chance, because I can tell you that I've watched a single episode. But I mean, from what you said, it sounds like they do, quite some good stuff with the story and the characters in the show.
Yeah, I think part of it is that it's the humor is very subtle, which sounds a little bit pretentious, but the plots themselves are not that wacky. It's not like Family Guy where not sure how to describe it. So the humor in Bob's Burgers doesn't come from the plots themselves usually. The plots themselves are kind of the setup, but then most of the jokes are kind of in individual lines and offhand comments, while the plot itself is kind of held together by a fairly grounded and wholesome family plot, essentially. And I think that is not everybody's taste. And people are kind of looking for the jokes, but actually you have to kind of really pay attention. Like the jokes are kind of blink and you miss it kind of thing. And then they're not really in the main plot, so to speak. And I think that is different from a show like The Simpsons or Family Guy or something like that, where it's more about the eccentric characters doing wacky things. I think that's one of the differences. So for that reason, it's got the reputation as being not funny, but I think it's actually really witty in its writing, and actually it holds up a lot better than a lot of these other shows because it's not simply about the gag.
No, fair. Maybe I'll give it a chance. I'm always on the lookout for kind of easy things to watch in the background when I'm trying to have some dinner or just like blow some steam. So yeah, I can check that out.
So I've been watching King of the Hill, which is an animated comedy show from 1997. So King of the Hill essentially is about this family living in Texas in the 90s. It's a 1997 show. It's basically one of those animated sitcoms. It basically deals with all sorts of social and political and cultural issues, but through the lens of this average Texan family in the late 90s. And it's a Mike Judge show. That guy for me is kind of hit or miss. Like I never really liked Beavis and Butthead, and I think Idiocracy is way overrated. But I think Silicon Valley is one of the greatest comedies ever made, and King of the Hill is kind of the proto Silicon Valley in terms of how it captures like the 90s in the way Silicon Valley captures the tech boom of the 2010s. And that it really understands what it is satirizing, and it's really smart about its satire and witty, and these characters kind of just embody these different issues and attitudes, and their wacky hijinks explore all sorts of various issues that are often very heavy and very thoughtful and fairly deep in their treatment of it. For whatever reason, I've never I've always known about King of the Hill, but I've never quite gotten into it. I think every time I saw a clip from it, it looked like second-rate Beavis and Butthead, which to me didn't look very interesting, but I kind of just started watching a couple of episodes just on a whim, and it's now more my favorite thing in terms of things I've watched recently. It's pretty much how you do satire, and it's pretty much how you do comedy, and it's how you talk about these heavy social issues through likable and flawed and wacky characters who often do everything wrong, but you care about their reasons for their mistakes. There's 14 seasons of it. There's a recent revival, and I'm currently on season 4. So I don't know how well that show ages and if the reboot is any good. But just the first couple of seasons are just top tier comedy and top tier satire. So that's a strong recommendation.
That is a very strong recommendation indeed. King of the Hill is one that I have also seen over the years, but just never really gave a chance. You know, I was always kind of stuck with like your Family Guys and other shows like that, Archer, and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of the ones that just never really had that appeal anytime I saw it. But it sounds like it goes quite in depth about, you know, various subjects and has a lot more layers to it than what meets the eye. So yeah, definitely one worth checking out, it seems.
It's got a very dry and understated humor, and that is part of it, that it's not like in your face gags from minute one the way you get it in Family Guy or Archer or something like that. Like, this is a lot more subdued and a lot more slow burn. The storytelling is not that slow, but it's kind of very sedate and very laid back in terms of how the story unfolds, but the gags kind of just start piling up very quickly, and it's just individual lines where if you blink you'll miss them, but it's just constant gags and one-liners and puns and all sorts of things that kind of sneak up on you, and you really have to pay attention to get all of them. Many episodes kind of unfold a bit like an 80s sitcom or something like that, where the plot itself is fairly grounded. It's a little bit like Bob's Burgers. Like a few weeks ago, I recommended Bob's Burgers, and that is kind of similar in that many of their plots are kind of standard sitcom plots, but it's the gags are kind of in between, and they try to sneak them past you. And once you kind of catch on to that and the mentality that goes into these gags, that you see them everywhere. So I think that is part of the hurdle as well. One of the running gags is that the wife is, or the mom is, a substitute Spanish teacher who is terrible at Spanish, and she just mispronounces everything. And she clearly learned Spanish from a book. And when she talks to actual Spanish speakers, it's a disaster. But she's totally confident in her abilities. And it just keeps piling on, and that is like something that unfolds over the course of seasons, where like it just keeps getting worse and worse, and she keeps creating problems for herself because her Spanish is that bad, but she's convinced she's God's gift to teaching and all of that, right? But she means really well, and she's really likable, and you root for her, but you like, even I don't even speak Spanish, and I cringe at her Spanish. Like, it's one of those things, right? So it's got a very specific dry humor that you kind of need to be on board with, and once you are, it's wonderful. The best thing I watched this week is Rob Roy, which is a 1995 historical biographical drama. So Rob Roy was like a Scottish freedom fighter against the English in like the 1700s. And this movie essentially tells a fairly idealized version of his story. So Rob Roy is like this villager who lives in the Scottish Highlands, and the lowlands are under English control. And he goes to the local aristocrat to borrow some money to develop his farm, right? So this is a movie about banking and loans and interest rates and that sort of thing. So he borrows this money, £1,000, right, which is a huge amount for him for the time and so on. And then the money gets stolen as it's brought to him, and the aristocrat accuses him of having stolen it, so that he doesn't have to pay it back. And that kind of spirals into this feud where they, like, the English send their troops to get the money back, and they burn some farms, and the Scottish fight back, kill some English people, and it escalates, and this entire thing then kind of comes down to a duel between the aristocrat and Rob Roy, who has kind of become this legendary freedom fighter, who has become like a symbol for like Scottish independence and Scottish just standing up to the Englishness, more or less without his doing it, just because he stands up for the right thing and does the right thing and stands by his principles. He's kind of rallying these people around it, and he's kind of a thorn in the sides of the English. And it's not completely historical, but it portrays Rob Roy as this kind of borderline saint. But it's still a really, really good story where the conflict is really well motivated, where the movie goes into extreme care and detail to justify the conflict, where Rob Roy believes what he believes and the English aristocrat believes what he believes. And then there's like other characters who are involved in this, who all have their own role to play. And what each character believes and what they do because of this is really meticulously motivated. And that is where the conflict comes from. Nobody's being stupid in this. Everybody is acting on the information they have, and on like that is colored by their prejudices about the English or the Scottish, as whichever applies, and their expectations and risk and uncertainty and all of that. It's about honor. It's about kind of colonialism in a sense, because the English are occupying the lowlands, right? And they're kind of trying to expand into the highlands. And there's like these three different, like there are these anglicized Scottish aristocrats who are collaborating with the English and all. Like there's a whole lot of stuff going on here that is really interesting and really well acted, really well written. And it kind of gives you a feel for the time without being all that historically accurate in terms of the actual events and the actual characters. And it was just a really good watch. It's got some amazing sword fights in it. Some people are saying it's got the best sword fight in all of cinematic history, and I'm not sure about that, but it's really good. I'd never heard of this person before. The basic story of it is real, like really happened. That was then the basis for this movie and so on, right? And so it's just I found this completely by accident. Never heard of Rob Roy before, and it was just a cool story. And I think it came out the same year as Braveheart, which completely overshadowed it. But this is just much, much better. And like, if you like historical drama, if you like just like good drama, if you like well motivated conflicts and interesting characters and layered characters, like this movie just runs circles around Braveheart while telling like a similar kind of story. 95.
95. Okay. And would you watch it?
I think it was on Amazon Prime in the UK.
Okay, I want to check out.
So strong recommendation, and it's one of those movies I'd never heard of. Nobody had ever recommended it to me. I might never have found this. So for that reason, if you like historical drama, if you like the era, if you like that cultural context, absolutely, like this is absolutely a good watch.